On January the 13th, 1982, Washington had its worst snowstorm for decades. Government came to a halt. The city closed down. Office workers were sent home early. Not until mid-afternoon were there signs of life at Washington National Airport. It had been closed all morning, to the frustration of thousands trying to escape to warmer climes. Now, passengers for Air Florida's flight Palm 90 to Miami were told to board. They were to be in the hands of a crew with little experience of bad weather.
I remember before we finally got on the airplane that I looked out there and I didn't see any evidence that the pilots had done a ground check of the airplane, which I could tell because there was no footprints walking around the airplane in the snow, and it never, the snow still looked undisturbed. So that bothered me a little bit. I specifically remember thinking, I want to see somebody walk around that airplane before I got on it. I never did see anybody walk around the airplane. Those guys were sitting fat, dumb, and happy in their cockpit and talking about the weather in Florida, as I recall, when I got on the airplane. The captain announced, after we had tried a couple times to back out using the tractor, he announced that the tractor was incapable of pulling us out by itself, but I do recall that he used some reverse thrust to try to back us out. In the snow and ice, I thought that was pretty abnormal. And as it turned out, it was, because it had the effect of sucking up the storm debris into the engines, and I think that, I know now from reading the accident reports that that was a contributing cause to what happened to us. I didn't think we'd actually get airborne, but I could feel us lift off the runway. The shaker was going, I could hear the dishes coming out of the galley all over everywhere, and I knew we were in deep shit. When we hit the bridge, it was kind of like being rear-ended on a freeway, and I said, Jesus, I survived that. And then I realized I was still heavily in motion, and the next thing I know, and we were tumbling, it seemed like, and then we hit something that seemed like 100 times harder than that first hit, which had to be hitting the river. And I blacked out, and as I was blacking out, I just figured that was it, so my last thought was, God help me.
Oh my fucking God.
The plane had hit the 14th Street Bridge over the River Potomac, the main route into Washington from the suburbs of Virginia. Several cars had been crushed by the plane's undercarriage.
The dark in that airplane, it was absolutely pitch black. I remember it settling onto the ground or onto the bottom of the river before I could get my legs free. And I remember swimming out over the top of the seats toward the back of the airplane. I knew I was out of the airplane when the light in the water turned from absolute black to sort of gray. And the contrast between having been in a nice hot airplane about 1 minute earlier, or maybe 5 minutes earlier, whatever it was, and where I suddenly found myself was just phenomenal. I mean, the airplane was gone. Everything was gone. Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes went by, something like that. And a bunch of rescue vehicles showed up on the Virginia side of the river. And I remember saying something, hey, everything's cool. They're here, And must have been half a dozen vehicles or so pulled up and sat, parked right beside the river there, and everybody jumped up, and there were another 500 people standing out there looking at us, and they just kept standing there and looking at us with their lights going and their sirens going and all that, and eventually I realized they had no way to get to us. And there were 10,000 people probably standing up on that bridge, or it seemed like 10,000. And they were all looking at us, and the irony began to set in on me that, I'd survived an airplane crash and I was going to freeze to death.
I had just gotten there, and it was about 3 deep at the bar, and I'd ordered a drink, and I don't think I ever got it. And someone said there was something on television. They had a couple TVs in there that an airplane had crashed into the Potomac. And the first vision I had was a Cessna 172 or something like that had crashed in the Potomac. Didn't make much of it. And then there was a phone at the end of the bar, and there was a guy yelling. There were 4 lines lit up, and he was yelling for some people I knew. He was hollering across this crowd, and all the pagers started going off. And then we looked up and we saw it, and someone got on the phone, and they said that a 737 had crashed in the Potomac. And so needless to say, we didn't have another drink.
"75 people died aboard Air Florida's Palm 90 that day in the heart of Washington, less than a mile from the White House. Despite all the people and all the technology, only 5 passengers could be saved from the freezing river. Flight attendant Kelly Duncan. Joe Stiley's secretary Nikki. She would be rescued later by a Park Service helicopter. Joe Stiley and Priscilla Tirado, who had left her baby and her husband behind in the plane. Priscilla Tirado is temporarily blinded by the spilled kerosene in the river. A passerby, Lenny Skuknik, can watch no more. He dives in and saves Priscilla Tirado's life.
Yeah. Everybody get behind the fire truck. Get behind the fire truck, all right?